I sort of hate to ask you this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to open with this one. Would you mind introducing yourself to the class? Imagine if, for whatever foolish reason, someone didn't know who you are. What would you like them to know about yourself?
Oh, God. I'd like them to think that I'm a super open person. I think I'm a very curious, adventurous person, which I think has kind of lent itself to the job over the years, because we fundamentally have to be interested in people and connecting with people. And I think that's what I try to do from job to job.
And looking at your jobs, there isn't like a role that you do. It's not like, oh, right, this is what I do. It'll be bottoms, right?
Yeah.
And it'll be Mary and George.
You don't see any commonality between Jeff and George?
I want to. Maybe I kind of do.
There is no crossover. I'd actually be really curious if anyone could find some crossover. But no, I think, the last couple of years were really very fruitful in the sense that I got to play like 4 very different characters, which I think, if most actors would say that's the kind of remit for getting into the job.
It's the dream.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to freak you out, but are you living the dream?
Yes, every day.
Every day. Apart from right now in this interview.
This is a particular low point, yeah.
This is hell. Everything else is brilliant. Because I can only imagine what it was like for you once Royal Blue hit.
Yeah.
That must have been a sort of a peak, a moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was really... It was a particularly weird time because, I had Red, White and Royal Blue and Bottoms come out in the same month, but we were obviously on strike, as an industry. And so wasn't able to promote any of them, but was, seeing kind of the resonance it was having online. And, it's that classic adage, like it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. I've been doing this for a decade and have had plenty of rejection and everything.
Your first film was in 2014, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Mind-boggling.
I know. I'm so old.
And now I'm so old. And, you've played soldiers and... By the way, your American accent, not that there's such a thing as an American accent. That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, we always get sent this general American for which it doesn't really exist.
It's like when Americans say, I do a good British accent. I was like... Go on, then.
Yeah, let's hear your regional...
What's that mean?
Let's hear your Scunthorpe accent. That's what I want. Someone from the US to come and do a very niche...
If someone walked in and absolutely nailed a Hull for them.
Oh, best actor of all time.
Hats off. Yeah. Incredible and slightly worrying. Very specific. Good for you. But yeah, going back to Royal Blue, was it sort of walking down the street, you felt the air a little bit changing?
I am the kind of person who I'd never want to change... how I live my life, and so, walking around, I did feel a bit more a sense of eyes on me and stuff. But honestly, I've only had really positive interactions because of it. And I think the thing that I care most about is, will it open the doors for me to create the artistry that I really want to create? And Mary and George is a perfect example of that.
Completely. This is exactly the sort of thing where you can convert that cachet into hanging out with Julianne Moore in what seemed to be the coldest buildings.
Yeah, no central heating in any of these bad boys.
There's no heated ruff that you're wearing. There's no no, the cold piece doesn't have
But the heat that emanates from Julie's aura is heat enough.
Nice.
You just want to be around it and just get some
like Pierce Brosnan and other people you've worked with, I would definitely just be standing near her or sitting next to her at the canteen, just going, just want to talk.
Look, I mean, she's obviously an icon. She's also just a really amicable, smart person and very attentive. It's funny, like I said, I've been doing this a decade now, but I still feel so green in my career compared to her, and you just kind of want to...
I think that should remain. I try to explain this to people, that feeling of is good.
I think so too. I think
sort of a superpower.
No, I think that moment of hyper confidence as an actor means you don't get to access that the really sort of special instinctual things that come with being in that sort of fight or flight moment, I think.
How bizarre would it have been if you walked into a room with Julianne Moore, who I imagine was assigned to this project before you were, and you were normal about it? That would be weird.
It would be. She would be like, why you need to treat me like a deity. This is unacceptable. She's not like that.
You're not bowing or scraping correctly.
No, I know. There was a procedure that we all had to go through before we meet Julia. It's very royal, and she weirdly has this person who rolls out a red carpet for her wherever she goes, which is
throws blossom petals.
Yeah, there was blossoms. You've obviously met her before.
One day I'll get to meet her again, but not after the incident. Very unlikely.
Oh, the incident. Yeah, we won't talk.
We won't talk about
the
it.
Incident.
I've been trying to avoid the following questions, but I'm going to do it now because you're going to have history tests all day. I'm your first interview of the day, I think, of the press tour, and people are going to ask you this question. I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
Who is Mary? Who is George?
I will give you the history lesson. So we start our story in Jacobean England. King James is the king, and Mary and George are part of Villiers family. They're basically sort of middling English class family, but sort of on the verge of potential poverty and oblivion because my father has just passed away and I'm sort of due to inherit nothing. And Mary sees potential in George that she doesn't see in the rest of her children and sends him off to France to become this Renaissance man, to learn, the skills to help elevate them in the world that they want to exist in the royal court. And so she sets him on this interesting path, and they kind of it's very Machiavellian and benefits both of them, maybe one more than the other at different times throughout the story. But yeah,
and it is based on fact.
It is. I mean, and I think that was the saying life is truer than fiction in a lot of ways. I mean, you're reading these scripts and you go, well, this is obviously dramatized, but George was the sort of original Casanova.
Yeah.
I mean, there were no doors that he felt he could not pass through.
Eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Based on the sort of power that he kind of accrued,
And I want to shout out, I guess it's the Sky Guys for coming up with a tagline for this. Lust, full stop. For power, full stop. Very nice.
It's pretty fitting, I think, for the show.
But your job essentially is of a fashion to charm and seduce your way around Jacobean England.
Yeah.
And we learn a lot about King James and the court. Like, I know it isn't a history lesson, but you must have just had out-of-body experiences every other day. Oh, look at the gorgeous country parlour we're in now. And, the costume design, all the attention to detail. Yeah. Like, this is thrilling. This is sort of why you do your job.
Well, and look, I'd never done a period piece before. And I think that it was daunting in the sense that, we are operating in these extremely regal situations, in the scenes and the settings that we're in with the costumes, as you were saying. But, obviously the modernity of the language kind of helped, I think, sort of transfer into that world. But I think there are things that you look for as an actor to help kind of take you from 2024 to being in Jacobean England, and those things don't half help, to be honest. Yeah.
I think definitely, for me, it's always the costume.
Yeah.
Like, once you're in the suit of armour, so to speak, you can sort of do it.
No, and I've got to shout out Annie Simmons, our costume designer, because, I mean, just the sort of the tightness, the sort of corsetedness of it all, it changes your posture and everything. You really have to walk in. I mean, one thing I really looked into is sort of when George came back from France, and having been taught how to dance and everything, I imagined him to walk a bit more sort of balletically almost. Exactly. He's kind of peacocking.
Yeah.
And you put these heels on and you can't help but just sort of, saunter around set. It's a bit pretentious, to be honest, but yeah.
If you don't enjoy it, you're doing it
No,
wrong, I think. I just struggle not to do Blackadder quotes.
yeah. There was some of that. Definitely, there was some Blackadder quotes on set from Tony specifically. But yeah.
Yeah, who plays King James? I would have definitely given lines to Julianne to read out as Queenie.
Yeah.
Just please, could you sit on this throne and could you just do Queenie for 5 minutes? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm curious if she'd be familiar with Blackadder. I don't know if it transferred so much to the US.
I reckon she's an Anglophile.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel she has this aura of being fluent in most cultures for some reason.
She's very intelligent.
She's really clever.
She's just really clever. Are there roles and performances, maybe this one is included, of course, where your friends have just gone, I don't believe you? They ask you, so what are you doing? And you go, I'm hanging out with Pierce Brosnan and whatever.
Yeah.
What's had the biggest reaction? Because to me, this is one. Because this is a
Yeah.
proper, both barrels period piece. It's dark and sexy and funny and fascinating.
Yeah.
And they go, no, you need to do more sort of tough work here.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely probably the one. I mean, I was so lucky that the movie I did before was with the amazing Anne Hathaway, and so
Clang.
I mean, really, I have no idea how I've collected this cornucopia of
that film strikes me as you going on like 24 dates with Anne Hathaway in front of cameras, and I was like, yeah.
We've all been there.
Haven't we?
Yeah. Mm. It was an education, and I feel lucky enough to actually call a friend, and I think we.
This is the idea of you.
This is the idea of you, yeah. But to go from one Oscar winner to the next, and your career, it kind of rapidly it changes.
I bet there was a particular friend that just went, I can't talk to you for a couple of months.
Oh yeah, and it's surreal because I think and I'm sure Julie and Annie can speak to this as well. It's like we all kind of have these people that we idolize, and we kind of create these sort of images around them growing up, and you actually meet them and work with them, and you realize what incredible, textured, talented people they are, and that's what it takes to build the chemistry to kind of to see that on screen, and going back to your question, I mean, this like undoubtedly, I think just the challenge and the scope of it, and Oliver Hermanus, our sort of director, executive producer, he was a large part I signed on to the project for, and he kind of prepped me for sort of the behemoth of what we're kind of going to get into. And
he'd seen you in Bottoms and went,
yeah, he was like, that guy knows how to get naked on camera and sleep with 14 characters. So he'll take his kit off for money. And so that was really the only reason I was cast, to be honest. But,
I thought the tight-fitting, American football uniform. Yeah, this all works.
This will translate. Will translate. That's the genius of Oliver Hermanus. Don't let anyone tell you different.
Thinks outside the box. I loved you falling head over heels, totally carking it in front of what looks like the largest group of people on the whole set. In the opening episode, you totally faceplant with a tray full of...
Well, yeah, I actually have some trivia for you. I
love a bit of trivia.
Yeah, I have to give you this jewel because that was quite early on in the filming process. And the stunt for that shot, was the sort of flipping of the tray.
Is this when you broke your ankle?
This is when I broke my ankle.
Shut up.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen the sort of gruesome after effects. I think I posted.
It is properly.
Yeah, it's quite nauseating. But the part of the stunt actually that I broke my ankle on wasn't even the sort of the tripping and the flipping. It was like that was the main part of it, and then I had to sort of sprint past camera, and it was actually in the heels, and you mentioned these amazing halls and buildings, but they're so slippery because they've been worn down over and so my ankle sort of flipped 90 degrees in, and I have to shout out also the onset medic for the day, because I'm not really a screamer when it comes to pain, and so I was kind of sitting there in quiet agony. And I thought, he came along with this numbing spray, and I thought, this will make me feel better. And I feel a sharp pain. I'm like, oh, my ankle's really hurting now. But I realized he'd given me a chemical burn on top of my broken ankle because he'd sprayed it right next to my skin. And so for the next 2 days, doing the remainder of the stunts and actually a dance sequence after that, I had sort of a bit of a floppy ankle, which had to be kind of tethered together and everything.
You had to dance with, and I quote you here, a floppy ankle.
That is the medical term, I believe. It was a pretty gruesome few days.
We've mentioned Anne Hathaway, Julianne Moore, and Pierce Brosnan. Do you have a particular out-of-body anecdote of this sort of moment when you're sitting there and, opening up a Kit Kat, sitting next to Pierce Brosnan? Is that...
God, yeah. I mean, Pierce Brosnan is an interesting one, actually, because I was doing the Cinderella movie with him over COVID, and we'd kind of started it, and then we'd been on hiatus, and then we'd come back, and we all kind of got put into a hotel together in the middle of nowhere, and so we only really kind of had each other to hang out with. And
like Cluedo and Monopoly.
I mean, yeah, I didn't play Cluedo with Pierce. I think Pierce is too cool for Cluedo.
Charades with James Bond, I need that.
Yeah, I really should have tried to leverage that in some sort of way. But instead it was more, we went on a couple of long walks around the sort of the countryside. And I mean, Pierce was my James Bond growing up as well. So, I mean, he's just effortlessly cool, but also just hyper intelligent and
You went on a series of strolls with
Yeah.
Bonham.
I feel like I need to make that into its own weird, like
a show. This should be a show.
Yeah.
Like a 2-episode show.
Like sort of my week with Marilyn, but like my walk with Pierce.
Into it. I'll leave you with this one last thought, and it's just a curiosity thing. When you go to weddings now, are you basically not allowed anywhere near the cake?
That's a really good point. I actually have to say, because this is quite a sore spot for me, I've never been to a wedding before. I don't know whether I just don't know people who are getting married. So the secret is I just have no friends. But I
This is the compliment for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
If I were the groom, you ain't coming.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think
because you'll wear a suit and I'd wear a suit, and I'm not having that comparison.
You're a very handsome man. I think you could. Yeah.
All right.
We're done.
Done. Sold. Get this man an Oscar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, for taking the time. Yeah, he was very charming.